Welcome to the Deep Dive podcast channel. Have you ever felt that not in your stomach before a big presentation? Or notice how worry sometimes leads straight to a tension headache? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the hidden ways our emotions and our bodies, well, talk to each other. Today, we're going to explore that fascinating connection.
It really is fundamental, isn't it? This constant two-way street between our psychological and physical selves. We often think of them as separate things, mind here, body there. But they're so deeply intertwined, and understanding that interplay, well, it can be incredibly insightful for our overall well-being.
Okay, so let's dive right in then. Our exploration today really points to the nervous system as this kind of key go-between for our minds and bodies. How exactly does this system take what we're feeling emotionally and translate it into, physical sensations?
Yeah, think of your nervous system like an intricate communication network. It's constantly relaying messages all through your body. When you experience an emotion that triggers a signal, it travels through this network. It's like an internal alert system, really. For example, if you perceive something as a threat, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. That's your body's sort of rapid response mechanism.
The one that primes us for action. Get this ready.
Exactly that. It initiates a whole cascade of physiological changes, all designed to help you either face the danger or, escape it. Fight or flight, your heart rate increases, your muscles tense up, breathing gets shallow, even your digestion slows right down to conserve energy.
Okay.
And then, on the flip side, when you feel safe, relaxed, your parasympathetic nervous system takes over. That brings things back to a state of calm. It slows your heart rate, relaxes muscles, promotes digestion, repair. If you're finding this interesting, by the way, and want to delve deeper into topics like this, do make sure you subscribe and maybe leave a comment with your thoughts or any questions you have as we go.
Right, so it's this really delicate balance between these two systems, sympathetic and parasympathetic. But what happens when life throws us, a curveball or lots of curveballs, and that balance gets thrown off? We're talking about what people often call chronic nervous system dysregulation, right?
That's it. Imagine the volume knob on your body's stress response getting sort of stuck in the on position. When we experience prolonged stress or maybe unresolved difficult experiences, our sympathetic system can become overactive. It's like the body is constantly on high alert, even when there isn't an immediate threat right in front of you. And this persistent state, it can have significant wear and tear on our physical health over time.
And the effects of that seem like they can be so wide-ranging. You mentioned feeling constantly tired or having ongoing gut issues, even things like increased inflammation.
Precisely. When your body's in that sustained state of, let's call it low-level alert, it just drains your energy reserves. That leads to that persistent fatigue so many people feel. The digestive system, which is incredibly sensitive to stress signals, can become really disrupted. That contributes to issues like irritable bowel, maybe acid reflux. We also see a rise in overall inflammation that can show up as headaches, muscle aches. It can even exacerbate autoimmune responses in some people. Sleep disturbances are also really common because that fight or flight system just struggles to downshift for proper rest.
Right, hard to switch off.
Yeah, and often there's just this general feeling of unease, a subtle sense that something isn't quite right physically.
That paints a really clear picture of how that constant emotional pressure can take a very real physical toll. And that leads us to this intriguing idea that our emotions are just feelings in our heads, but they actually have a kind of energetic presence in our bodies.
That's a really important shift in perspective, I think. Emotions are inherently dynamic. They have movement. They are signals, really, designed to move through us, to prompt us to take action, maybe communicate our needs, even just to ourselves. Think about the actual physical sensations that go with different emotions, or, the flush of anger, the heaviness of sadness, that quickening pulse when you're excited.
Yeah, those are very real feelings.
They are. These aren't just metaphors. They are real physiological events happening in your body. Thinking of emotions this way helps us move beyond just seeing them as mental feelings. We start understanding them as forces that require movement. And when that movement is blocked or suppressed, well, that energy has to go somewhere in the body.
So we try to ignore them or suppress these emotions, maybe anger or sadness. What happens to that energy? It doesn't just vanish, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater, isn't it? It takes constant effort, and eventually that pressure finds a way to manifest in different ways. Our experience and a lot of research suggests that this unprocessed emotional energy can become stored in the body. Think of that tightness in your chest when you're feeling anxious.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe clenching your jaw when you're frustrated or angry?
Those are sensations I think a lot of people can probably identify with. Very common.
Absolutely, those knots in your stomach when you're worried, or perhaps even chronic back pain that might be linked to carrying a long-term emotional burden. These can absolutely be physical manifestations of unresolved emotions that are seeking expression, seeking attention.
Right.
And it's crucial, really, to recognize that these aren't imagined ailments. They're not all in your head in that dismissive sense. They are genuine ways the body signals that something needs attention on an emotional level.
So the body is essentially trying to communicate with us through these feelings. And this becomes maybe even more complex when we think about the impact of difficult or traumatic experiences. You said earlier, it's not just the event itself, but how our system responds when it feels overwhelmed.
That's a really key distinction. Trauma isn't solely about what happened to you. It's more about the impact of that experience on your nervous system's ability to cope, its capacity. When we feel utterly helpless, overwhelmed, those responses can become deeply wired into our system, ingrained. They can become our go-to reactions when we face perceived stress later on, even if the current situation isn't actually dangerous in the same way.
And these can show up in those well-known stress responses, fight, flight, freeze, and also the less commonly discussed Fawn response, which is about trying to please or appease others to feel safe.
Let's look at those briefly. The fight or flight response puts you on high alert, right? Your body is tense, you're hypervigilant, constantly scanning for danger, essentially. This can show up physically as things like elevated blood pressure, maybe recurring headaches or migraines, muscle stiffness, even panic attacks.
Okay.
The freeze response, on the other hand, is more about shutting down, both emotionally and physically, and energy collapse. There can be a sense of numbness, disconnection, feeling heavy or drained, like moving through treacle.
Yeah.
And it can contribute to things like chronic fatigue, difficulty concentrating brain fog, and even some widespread pain conditions, like fibromyalgia-like symptoms.
Yeah, and the Fawn response, that pattern of prioritizing others' needs above your own for safety.
Yes, that's a survival strategy where individuals learn, often very early on, to prioritize the needs and feelings of others. It's done to avoid conflict or perceived threat, to keep the peace, essentially, for safety. While it can be a way to navigate difficult relationships, consistently putting others first like that, it can lead to adrenal exhaustion, digestive problems, increased susceptibility to illness, autoimmune issues sometimes, and ultimately just profound emotional burnout.
Wow, it's all so incredibly interconnected. And the stress hormone, cortisol, that seems to play a really significant role in this mind-body link as well.
It does. Cortisol is absolutely essential for our short-term stress response. It's not inherently bad. It gives us that quick burst of energy, helps regulate bodily functions during an immediate crisis. However, when emotional stress becomes chronic, we see persistently high levels of cortisol. And that's where the problems can really start to arise.
And those long-term effects can be quite damaging, can't they? Including impacting our immune system.
Yes, absolutely. Prolonged high cortisol levels can actually suppress the immune system.
Yeah.
That makes us more vulnerable to infections, illnesses. It also promotes inflammation throughout the body, which we now know is implicated in so many chronic conditions, things like heart disease, arthritis, gut disorders.
Right.
Furthermore, it can really disrupt our sleep patterns, which then impacts cognitive function, hormone balance, and it significantly affects our mood. It can contribute to increased anxiety and depression. It just really underscores, again, how deeply intertwined our emotional and physical health truly are. You can't separate them.
No, you really can't. And speaking of the gut-brain connection is another fascinating area where we see this interplay so clearly. It's often called our second brain, isn't it? And for good reason.
Absolutely. The gut is just teeming with neurons, millions of them, and it produces a huge percentage of our body's serotonin, which is a key neurotransmitter for mood regulation. The communication between the gut and the brain is constant, and it's bidirectional. It goes both ways. So emotional stress can have a very direct, very immediate impact on how our gut functions.
Yeah, and we've all experienced that, right? That feeling of butterflies when we're nervous, or maybe even nausea when we're highly anxious or scared.
Exactly those feelings. When we're under emotional duress, digestion can slow right down as the body redirects energy elsewhere. Stress can also alter that delicate balance of bacteria in our gut. We call that dysbiosis, an imbalance between the beneficial and the less helpful bacteria.
Okay.
And it can even increase the permeability of the intestinal lining. Sometimes people talk about leaky gut.
Yeah.
That can trigger inflammation, not just in the gut, but systemically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, emotions like fear, sadness, worry, They can manifest in all sorts of gastrointestinal symptoms: discomfort, bloating, cramping, changes in bowel habits, IBS. And importantly, it's a two-way street. A healthy, balanced gut can also positively influence our emotional well-being. Support resilience.
This all brings us back really to this idea of psychosomatic patterns, where our bodies can express underlying emotional issues through physical symptoms. And it's so important to understand that psychosomatic doesn't mean the symptoms aren't real or imagined.
Precisely. That's a common misunderstanding. It simply means that our psychological and emotional state is significantly influencing our physical body and contributing to the symptoms we're experiencing. The body has its own language, its own way of communicating. And sometimes when we struggle to verbalize our emotions or maybe even recognize them fully ourselves, they can find an outlet through these physical sensations.
And there's so many common examples, aren't there? Like persistent tension headaches that might be linked to feeling under constant pressure or perfectionism, or that neck and shoulder pain that seems to flare up when we're feeling really overwhelmed or burdened.
Exactly. Or chest tightness that can be associated with unprocessed grief or anxiety, even panic. Stomach issues, as we've discussed, can often be related to fear or maybe difficulty processing difficult life events, digesting experiences, if you like. These physical symptoms, they can really be seen as invitations to look a little deeper, to explore what might be going on emotionally underneath the surface. They're not just annoyances to be suppressed or ignored.
That's a great way to frame it. An invitation. This has been such an insightful exploration, really fascinating. Before we wrap up, maybe we could touch on a few common questions people often have about this mind-body connection.
Sure, happy to.
Okay, one that comes up a lot is, can simply thinking positive thoughts cure physical ailments that might have an emotional root?
That's a good one. And, well, while a positive outlook is certainly valuable, it can support the healing process, absolutely. It's often not enough on its own to address deeply held emotional patterns or chronic nervous system imbalances. True healing in this context often involves acknowledging and actually processing those underlying stored emotions, feeling them, rather than just trying to bypass them with positive affirmations alone. It's more about addressing the root cause, not just the symptom.
Right, not just papering over the crack. Okay, another frequent question. If medical tests don't find a specific physical cause for my symptoms, does that just mean it's all in my head?
Ah, yes, the all in your head dismissal. It's such an important point. When medical investigations don't reveal a purely biological explanation for physical symptoms, it absolutely does not mean those symptoms aren't real or valid. Instead, it can be a really significant clue, a clue that the body is communicating emotional distress. It's not that the pain or discomfort is imaginary at all. It's that the origins might lie in that complex interplay between mind and body we've been discussing. Reframing it as the body's way of signaling emotional or nervous system distress can be a much more helpful and frankly accurate way to understand what's happening.
That's a much more compassionate view, too.
Yeah.
And finally, many people wonder about the timeline for healing. If someone starts to actively address their emotions in relation to their physical symptoms, how quickly might they expect to see changes?
Yeah, people understandably want to know that. But healing this connection, it's a journey. It's really not a quick fix. It requires time, definitely patience, and usually a consistent effort. Effort towards developing greater self-awareness, listening to the body, and perhaps learning new ways of responding to emotions and stress. So the timeline will be really different for everyone. It depends on the depth and duration of their stored emotional experiences, and also their individual capacity for self-compassion, for integration, the support they have. Often we see gradual shifts, improvements over time, rather than some kind of immediate transformation. It's really about embarking on a process of reconnecting with your body and its innate wisdom.
That makes sense. It's a process, not an event. Well, it's just so clear from our conversation that the way our emotional lives and our physical health are intertwined is, well, it's profound, isn't it? And really multifaceted. Our bodies are constantly giving us information, sending signals. And often those physical symptoms can be a powerful way our system signals underlying emotional experiences that need attention.
That's right. The body keeps the score, as they say.
We truly hope this deep dive has offered you, our listeners, some valuable insights into this intricate relationship, and perhaps sparked a new way of thinking about the messages your own body might be sending you. Remember, just cultivating this understanding, this awareness, it's a really significant first step towards greater well-being. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration today.